In putting the agenda together today, there was a lot to consider because they've made quite a lot of changes in this particular version. But what I've done for this session today is just taken uh, all the latest changes across the board, covering a few areas. And what we will be doing is we will be doing a phase 2 or part 2, wave 2 2023, which is going to focus purely on inventory because there's been a lot of changes. And yeah, it was really hard to work out what we want to include it in this session, but we've decided to have a part 2 as well, which will focus purely on inventory. We will cover some of the aspects today, and as soon as we have the dates, we'll let you know. So let's go and see what we've got today. So first of all, I've taken a look at the main application, and in this case, I've looked at inventory counts and adjustments, the improvements that they're making there. And then also basically whether you can tell whether your sales order or your production order is ready to go to the next level, in other words, to get to be picked. Then we're going to look at the general ledger accounts for payables and receivables and how you can use the different control accounts in your transactions. Then we're going to have a look at Power BI, and this is basically to see the changes that they're making. They've made a few changes, and I think this is an area they're going to focus a lot on in the future. So at least they are starting to make some changes there. Then we're going to look at the user experience. And again, if you do work with multiple tabs, it's always been quite difficult to know what's on each particular tab. So in this case, they've just made it a lot more easier. And again, if you're going to be sharing links to pages and records, we also need to make sure that they actually become readable and people actually understand what they're linking on. And then one of my favorites is add existing table fields to pages. So we're not limited to certain fields. They're going to expose everything to us. And lastly, we're going to look at the reporting pay times, which is a legal requirement for the large companies. So let's get started. And the first one we're going to look at is the inventory counts and adjustments. So they've made a couple of changes in this area. And one of them is around the physical inventory order screen. So this is the one that you may be using for stock takes. In the past, if items didn't have any transactions, you couldn't include them in the listing. You'll be able to do that now. And they've also included the item reference number. That's also been added to the form. So for those of you who do use like a supplier number or barcode, that can also be shown. The next one is on the inventory receipts and inventory shipments. So if you do use these two documents, you can now do a correction document. Please bear in mind that the inventory receipt and inventory shipments are not focused around warehouse handling. So I'm not talking about the put away documents or the pick documents, and it's just purely around receipting and shipments, but we'll go through that shortly. And the other one that they've done is been allowing you to adjust the inventory from the inventory page. Now, you've always been able to do this, but they've just slightly enhanced it. So again, for those of you who have already tried doing it, you just click on the 3 dots, and when you make the adjustment, it will obviously post through a transaction. So let's go and have a look at that functionality. So to start with, if we go into the physical inventory order, now I've actually bookmarked all these things just to make it so much easier to get to. And here's one that I have created. So what will happen now is you'll now notice the item reference number is a field that is or can be exposed on the table if you do need to use it. And all I need to do is calculate the lines. So what's come in, and this is the extra option that they've included in here, which is include items without transactions. And this is pretty useful, especially if you're taking on new products and there's been no transaction movement at all. You can now get those onto the form. You'll see here, I've also just for ease of or quickness to get some data in, I've just used my item category code as a filter, but you've got various filters that you can use. So let's just go and click on OK. And that will now tell me that there's 88 lines. Now I did create a brand new item here, so you can see these ones are pretty much all the static one or the normal ones that come through with a demo system. But I actually went and created my own one called a comfy chair. It's got absolutely no transactions, but that one has now been included. And because I did create it with what we call stock keeping units, it has brought out that record for each particular location. So I could have actually filtered down to just one location in there. And because I've left it blank and open, it's brought back all my locations. So that's quite useful if you want to include transactions that have no transactions, or include items that have no transactions at all. Now, the next one is this inventory receipts that I mentioned. Now, the inventory receipts, and let me just get rid of my fact box. I've already created an inventory receipt, but I realized that I've actually made a mistake on it. Now, you'll notice that this is not anything to do with a vendor. And if I was to do a shipment, it's got nothing to do with a customer. These are just ad hoc inventory receipts and inventory shipment records. So, and please note, this is not where you're going to be doing warehouse handling. And when I talk about warehouse handling, what I'm meaning is you're not doing those create the inventory picks and putaways, or the create warehouse shipments and receipts and shipments and picks. This is just purely just to do basic transactions. So I created one earlier, which was I did a transaction where I receipted 6 items into the system. So all I need to do now is, and I realized when I did that transaction that I've made a mistake, so I need to correct it. So if I come into here, I can copy a document. So I can say, well, go and find me that posted receipt document that I made a mistake on. You can then go and choose the list, which one it was that you made the mistake. So it's this one I pushed through at the very beginning. And then I'm saying, well, bring back the header information, recalculate the lines. Now this one, it's up to you whether you want to recalculate the costs and things along those lines. If you want to take the original cost, then you wouldn't do that. Copy as a correction. So because I was doing a receipt, I receipted 6 in, I actually want to reverse this transaction now. I could go and do a shipment, but I can actually use the receipt documents and just say, well, this is a correction. So because I received 6, it will now do a -6 for me. And again, this is pretty useful, especially if you have got transactions where you have got serial numbers and lot numbers. And if I was to go back and do a shipment document, I'd have to go and re-enter all that information in. So I can very quickly say, yes, go and copy any item tracking values. So for now, I'm just going to copy it through, and I'm copying it through as a correction. So it will go and find that particular document and bring the information through. You'll now notice there is this button up here which says, is this a correction or not a correction? So it's brought back the document and it says 6. Now some of you might think, well, hang on, this is a receipt. Surely it should be a negative receipt, and therefore it should be minus. Because this toggle button is actually on, which is the correction one, if I go in and I look at my preview posting, it will automatically make it a negative for me. I don't have to put that negative sign in. So if I go and have a look at the item ledger entry, you'll see it will put a -6 in there for me. So I don't have to do that. So once I've got all that information in, all I would need to do is come through and post it. The last one I wanted to look at or show you was how that inventory adjustment works from the inventory page. So here's my item. I'm just going to call up my Athens desk. And what you'll notice down here in the inventory section is I have got 16 items available. Now I can click on that 3 dots and it will give me my current inventory, what my new inventory is, and the quantity to adjust. So at any point in time, and as long as there's no warehouse handling, I can come in and say new inventory. In this case, I say, well, I most probably found 8. So I can see there will be an adjustment there of 3, or I can put in and say, well, there's only 2 there, in which case it will put a -3, and I can then post that through. I will post that through. And then if I go and look at my inventory, you can see the inventory quantity has been adjusted there from 16 down to 13. And it's also put a negative adjustment in for me. So that's pretty useful. But again, you just need to be sure that you give people the right permissions to see whether they actually are allowed to do that or not. Moving on to the next one is what they call suggesting the next steps for sales and production orders. Now, this is all about knowing, can I go and pick my sales order, or can I go and pick my items for production? So they've come up with, so in some cases, if you do use the reservations option, you can reserve your stock. So if you've got 100 in stock and you've got an order for 20, it will reserve the 20 for that particular sales order. Now, there might be instances where you've got sales orders coming in, but you don't have inventory, or the purchase order's not arrived yet. So when that order actually does arrive, you want to have that reservation taken up by that sales order. And at the moment, you have to go in and manually do that for you. Well, they've now given us what we call a reservation worksheet. You can also up here have different batch names. So again, you can then default how it does its reservations based on item group or even by demand type. As you can see here, they've got sales orders, transfer orders, and job. And again, when they do those allocations, how are they going to do them? In full or equally? So let's go and have a quick look at that and how that will all work. So from here, I've got my reservation worksheet. And what you'll notice up here, I have got two options. Let's have a look at what I've done with chairs here. So I can just come in and edit. And you can see here, so I've set a group, I've given it a name, I've got the demand type. So do I just want to do allocations or reservations just on sales orders, or do I want to take into consideration my transfer orders, service orders, jobs, production, or assembly components? In my case, I'm just going to do all. We can also say a start date formula or an end date formula. So I'm going to say, just go and look at things for 1 week. So let's just go and allocate what stock I have for any demand for the next week. So I could do it for 2 weeks, a month. You decide what you want to do. And then here I've just got a filter. In this case, I've just done it on an item code, but you can obviously go through these filters and decide how you want to do it. But more importantly is this allocation policy. So it says, well, when you want to allocate the stock or reserve it, how am I going to allocate that stock out? Well, they've got two options here. If I come in and edit the list, you can see we've got basic, no conflicts, which tells me if I do have enough stock, just go and allocate it. If I don't have enough stock, how will I do this? In this case, I've said go and do it equally. So, and I can choose which order I want to do this in. So maybe I want to say, well, move that down, distribute everything equally. But again, if I do have enough stock, then go and do basic. It's entirely up to you which way you want to do that. So let's go and see how this will work. So I'm just going to work with my default one. I will then come into home and say get demand. Remember, there's all my demand type. I can say to the system, well, quickly go and allocate after it populates. Automatically do it, but you do have the ability to do that from the screen. So let me go in and do this. So it's going through, it's working out all my demand, and it's come back with everything that needs to be in here. So what you'll notice is there's my remaining quantity reserve left off from my sales order. There's my quantity to reserve and the available quantity to reserve. Now, what you will notice here is that in this case, in most of these cases for all these ones in between, I've got plenty of stock in there. But you'll notice the first one is my London swivel chair, and the bottom one is also the London swivel chair. I only have 3 available in stock, but yet I've got a demand here for 5, and I've got a demand for 2. So based on my allocation policy, let's see what it will do. So I can come into allocate here. And I can say, just go ahead and allocate. And what it's done is you'll notice for the ones in the middle, it's just taken the full quantity and allocated it. But because I said go in and do basic, if there was enough stock, go in and basically hand it out, allocate, which is what it's done on the middle ones. My second option was to distribute it equally. Now, because I've only got 3, it says, well, half of 5 is obviously 2.5, and obviously half of 2 is 1. So it's allocated 1 there, and it's allocated 2 there because I only had 3 left. So that's how it's actually worked. And again, you could come to each line and have a look at each policy, and you could actually change those policies per line if you wanted to. You could even choose and say, well, I want to give everything to this particular person and nothing to the job. You can decide and make the changes. And then once you've done all of that, All you need to do is accept, and it will go through and tick these boxes for you. And then all you need to do is click on there and say make the reservation. And then it will update and create all the reservation transactions for you. So I think that's going to be pretty useful for those of you who do use reservations and may not have enough of stock, but when your purchase order comes in, you want to go and reserve stock, so you can now use this option. The next one they've also done is around this whole area of looking at what stock is available or not, is on the document. Obviously, your items do need to have that reservation, which is set on the item card, to optional or always. Then on the fact box, they've also got this new field here called reserve from stock. And it's telling you what stock has been reserved or not been reserved. And again, if you've got a really long order, let's say 200 lines, you don't want to go through each single line to say, well, have I got enough or not? So we can look at the order and look at the statistics, and it gives us an overall result for the order. So let's go and see how that's going to work. So if I come back into here and I go into my sales orders, let's go and pick one up. Here we are. Let's go into there. And I'll pick up my first one. So I'm just drilling into it. And I've got my fact box open down the side here. And what I'm going to do is just scroll down to the sales lines down here. There it is. So what you'll notice for my whiteboard, I have got 12. I have exposed my reserve quantity field, and you'll notice that these 10 have been reserved. So from down here, it's telling me there's been a partial reservation. On the item for the desk, you'll see it's been reserved in full. And for the London swivel chair, I didn't click on my reservation worksheet. I didn't make those reservations, so you can see it's still outstanding and it still says none. So those are the three options: partial, full, or none. And those are the options for you. So you can tell you that this one's not been reserved from stock, where this one there's been a partial reservation. So basically, if we need to deliver in full, we know we can't. But as I mentioned, if you want to look at the whole order, all you need to do is come up to order and then to statistics. And on here, they've also got that same field, reserve from stock. And it will tell me basically this is the sales order is not fully able to be delivered. So therefore, it's only partial. So again, you can make the decision now. Do I want to go ahead and issue my pick list? Or do I want to hold back until I've got enough stock for the whole order to then go ahead and process it? So that's having a look at what they call suggest the next steps for sales and production. The next one I wanted to show you was the different control accounts for accounts payable and accounts receivable. This is something they've been promising for a while, and I know I've had it up for discussion in previous webinars, but I've had to pull it back. But it's good to see that it's finally been released. So what it is, it just allows you to post to a different posting group if required. So on a particular transaction, you may want to post a particular transaction to maybe another control account, such as bad debts or sundry debtors for non-standard transactions. So we do have to set this up first. So you do need to go into your sales and receivable setup or your purchases and payables. And there is a field, as you can see on the screen here, it's called allow multiple posting groups. That does need to be turned on. And then you also have to update your customer and vendor posting groups, and I'll show you how. But you also remember to do the alternatives on both sides. Otherwise, you may not be able to reverse your selection. So let's go and have a look. So I've come across to my sales and receivables. Let me just quickly refresh my screen here. Let's wait for it to pop up. Which one am I working on? This one here. What I might do, if it doesn't take me to the right company, no, it is taking me to the right company. This is working in, I am just using the Cronus AU sandbox. So it's not as fast as my normal production environment is. So this is my sales and receivables setup, and you can see here we've got allow multiple posting groups. So when we set up our customer posting groups, in my case, we have domestic. I normally have domestic, foreign, intercompany, but I've also decided to create a new customer group called New Zealand customers, and you'll notice each one of them points off to a different control account. Now, when it comes to allowing you to have alternatives, what it's saying is basically when I have a document, if I'm using the domestic customers, or if my customer's been allocated to the domestic customer posting group, I can post individual transactions to another posting group, in this case, to the New Zealand one. So I'm going to say I can swap between those two groups. So you do need to define those groups. So what does that actually mean for us? So if I come back and I go in and I look at my, so I'll just go back to my sales invoices. I'll come to the screen and go into my sales invoices. If I look at transaction 199 here, this is a Datum Corporation, and they generally link to my domestic. So if I come down here, you can see I have got my domestic posting group. Now, what this will allow me to do is actually change this and say, well, for this particular transaction, I may want to just post it to that control group, which is all very well. So by doing that, I can now come in, as you notice, again, it is with a datum, and then this is just another invoice, and I have now changed it to New Zealand. Now, I did make that comment. You need to make sure that you do the reverse allocation if you want to, because now if I go, well, hang on, yes, I wanted to post this off to the New Zealand posting group for this particular one-off transaction. I've made a mistake, and I actually want to go back and put it to domestics. It is going to give me an error. One of the nice things, they've actually changed the way they do their report, their error messaging. As you can see, it's a different color now. And also it just seems to be a little bit more intuitive, let's say, is maybe the right word to use here. So it says you cannot change the value NZ to domestic because the alternative posting group has not been filled in. And what they mean by that is while I had for domestic, I did set up New Zealand. When I came to New Zealand and I said, well, what are my alternative posting groups? There were none. So basically, I can't go from New Zealand back to domestic. So just be aware of that option if you are going to swap things around. Now, so that's the new option to have different control accounts if required. Next option I thought we would take a look at is the Power BI side of it. They're asking to be focusing more and more around Power BI and the options. So now what they're doing is allowing you to actually, when you open it up, to have a look in the full screen view mode, which is quite nice. If your Power BI has been written with multiple pages, in the past, if you had swapped to a second or a third page, came back out, it would always show page 1 there. It will now allow you, if you are going to go to page 2, you can stay with page 2 as the default option when you exit. Also, they've allowed you to do the focus mode and drill down. So if I just wanted to focus on a certain part of my dashboard, it will allow me to do that as well. And moving forward in the future, they are going to allow you to have short scorecards to be shown on the Power BI within Business Central. Let's go and just see, I might have to, sorry. I've obviously got a timeout on these things, so let's just quickly refresh and we'll have a quick look at these and see what it's doing. So within here, on my Power BI, what am I talking about? So this is one of the 3 Power BI dashboards that Microsoft do provide. They do provide one for finance. They also provide one on sales, and they also provide another one on the CRM. So this is my financial dashboard. Now what you can do is they notice you've got the focus mode, so you can just have a look at that on the screen. Back to my report, if I wanted to focus on that area, I can report back to, or click back. But more importantly, when I want to, I can expand. They seem to have changed this order, or this order seems to keep changing, so just be aware of that. So we have got the expand here, and it now opens it up. But what is really nice is you've got this full screen mode here. So I can open it right up and start to work with it. So you can see I've also got my changes in here. Again, it depends on how the report has been written. We've got the ability to do some drill downs, and I think in here I can drill down again. And when you get to the very end, you can also see there's no further drill downs, but we can drill up, start to drill back up again. So they do have extra functionality included in here. Again, I have talked about the focus mode, so it's really just bringing it right up to the screen level for you. Take that back out. And again, when I come back into here, if I just say, well, let's look at net change revenue, when I exit, it will hold on to that page. It doesn't take me back to the first screen. So that's just some of the changes that they've made of Power BI, just making it just a little bit easier to use with inside Business Central. And again, they do seem to be doing more options or more work around the Power BI space. So we'll wait and see what they come up with. The next area I wanted to look at was in the user experience. So for those of you who do work with multiple tabs, you can now see what page is open. So what you'll notice, like on this one, I'm on my customer listing screen. So here I've got the customers and it's telling me it's customers and it's from wave 2. And again, on this item card, you'll notice item card 1896 is there. You don't have to do anything to turn this on. It will automatically be there for you. So you can see up here, ultimate customer, I'm on that particular page. As you can see, I'm there on the customer page. I'm here on a sales invoice 103201. This one I was on, that's most probably also going to be refreshed. That was just my wave screen. But what you'll notice is got this items wave 2. Where's the wave 2 coming from? It's coming here from this little logo, which is basically set up on your company information. So for those of you who are working with multiple tabs, they do have the what option you're on. So just making it a little bit easier for you to go to the right page if you do work with all that information. As I said, you don't have to do anything. It will automatically appear for you. The next one is sharing links to pages and records. So the whole thing with Microsoft is this whole concept of being able to use the tools that you use on a daily basis, like your Excel, your Teams, your Outlook, and linking it together with your ERP system, which in this case is Business Central. So again, if you do want to share information, they're just making it really easy for you, but also making it more intuitive so you can actually know what you're actually going to go and look at rather than just giving you this very long URL. So what you do is you use the copy link feature in the page, as you can see here, just by clicking on that icon. This is where you had the edit in Excel or open, but in this case, share to Teams and copy link. You can take that copy link, you can post it into your emails, Teams or any other document. And then when the person who's receiving it, they can then just click on that link. In this case, as you'll notice when I go through it, they can click on that link and it will open up the relevant page within Business Central. Obviously, with the clause there, permissions permitting. So let's have a look at what that all means. So what I did is in here, I just came in and I said copy link. I also just took one from a purchase order as well, put that in an email and sent that to myself. So this is, so for my normal email, I sent it through to this current email. And as you can see here, if I click on there, I will get back to that particular page. But if I click on this link purchase order, what it does is it goes and opens up Business Central and it takes me directly to that purchase order. So again, permissions permitting, it's just making it really easy for you to communicate with other team members and say, hey, please go and look at this purchase order. I need something done on there. And the next one is one of my favorite ones is adding existing table fields to pages. So what they've done is they've just tried to make it so much easier for those of you who do want to add extra fields or remove fields. In the past, it's been really quite hard to know which fields you can and can't add. Where do they come from? Is it a standard BC field or not? So basically, they're now going to give us, or they are going to show us the information about that field, and I'll show you examples of that. They will also you can also now make fields read-only. So again, for those of you who don't want people to go in and start editing certain fields, you can actually make them non-editable. But again, if you do need to unlock them, you can. And again, you can also, what I think is really great is bring in all the fields in a table onto a page if required. So in the past, they said, these are the fields that we want you to look at. Moving forward, they will allow you to go and look at any field that you want that is on that particular table. Please note, down here, this is only available in preview. Okay, some of these fields will obviously be non-editable, especially if it's a system field, but at least you are able to now bring them through and have a look. So let's go and see what they have done for us. So I'm just going to go back to the screen here. So here is, let me just go and undo that one. So here's my sales invoice, and I may want to bring in extra information. So all I need to do is go up to the top here, go to personalize. Which area am I going to personalize? So I'm going to click on this area and click on the field up here. So this will come up and open up. It does take, I've noticed it does take a little bit of time for this to pop up now. I say this is still in preview. Some of this is still in preview, so I think they are still working on it, and hopefully they will speed this process up. But it's going back and it's checking and it's looking across everything that's on that particular field that is normally available, but also what is not available. So the big change here is you've got this field here called recommended fields. And you'll also notice they've got the little I down there saying these fields are actually not available on the current field. If I drop down, as I said, this is still all a work in progress, and I'm not sure when they will actually release it. It's supposed to be released for this version, which I know my system's been updated next week. It's now telling us that we will be able to see all fields, but in the advanced section here, I've got in this listing down here, show me the fields that are already on the page. So you'll now notice there's a difference here between the I or non-I. And as I hover over things, as you can see, well, what is this field? They're now giving us information. It specifies what you're selling. The options vary depending on what you choose in the field type. If I go to quantity assign, what is this field all about? Do I, don't I want them? But what's more importantly is they tell you that type of field. So it's a decimal type. It's been defined by the page. But it's also basically a field that's coming out of Business Central. So for those of you who are running with extensions, third-party applications, or where you've had development and you're not too sure, is this a Business Central field or is this something that's being created specially for us? It will now tell you on this tooltip that it's actually showing. So again, if I wanted to come into here, you still got the search button here. So again, if I want to look for a second description field, you can see this one's not on the field. So instead of in the past, we had to drag and drop it, all it will do is you just click on that field and it will go and guess the best place to put the field. So it's saying, well, this is where it is. So all you would need to do now is just come in and say, yep, I want to show it, or maybe you do want to move it. So let's go and have a look. So that field is now available for me. Let me come back into my recommended fields here and just take that off. And I'm going to go and look for another field in here. So let me come down and say job number. I want job number to be shown. So what you'll notice, it's gone back through and said, well, we believe that the job number field should be shown in this position. Again, you can just come in and you can show it, or you can actually move it to where you want to go. But it is depending on the field. Like if I had return reason code, it will come in and it will put it in the fit into the screen here for me, and it's kind of decided where it wants it to go. Not sure where I put it in there. There it is. So it's actually bringing it quite close to the front. So that's something that's new. But more importantly, what will come through is they will start to show you all the fields. So those are things like maybe calculation fields, created by, created time, anything that you need to, anything that's in the table will eventually be shown. And I look forward to that because one of the reasons for that is with the, when they brought out the new, let me just come out of the document here. When they brought up the analyze field and when you can start to analyze information, we know that there are extra fields are sitting in the table, but they just haven't been exposed. So the listing in here in the columns is based on what you are seeing on this actual screen. So hopefully moving forward, once they've released that all fields, you'll be able to add extra fields into here. And then when we do the analyze, we will most probably have extra functionality that we may not have had in the past. So that's from a user point of view, adding existing tables to fields. The last one I wanted to look at was this whole reporting payment times. So for large organizations, you may be required to submit how long it takes for you to pay the smaller companies. So they've brought this out. So there's a new option called payment practice. You make the choice of your settings. You can click on the various links to get the details of all that information. But Microsoft AIM is, while this is a legal requirement for certain countries such as Sweden and ourselves and New Zealand and a couple of others, they actually want to make this a standard feature or a feature globally. So I think there's going to be a bit more development around that area. But let's have a look and see what they're doing with it. So as I said, the option here is payment practices. You can click on that. Now, I already created a few of them, but to create a new one, you would just click on new. So let's go and have a look at this one. And I'll just make this editable. So again, it just gives it a number. So how do we want to report this information? Well, do we want to do it on a particular period? What are the payment or reporting times, or how often are we paying people? Do we want to do it by period, or do we want to do it by company size? Now, very quickly, if you are doing it by company size, what you'll need to do is on your vendors, especially on the vendors. Now, I'll just quickly click into Fabricam here. There is this new field here called company size code. Again, this is a list that you can define yourself, and you can either click on select from full list, or there's also this new thing that's come out, show details. So on some of these screens, you can come in and it just shows you all the information around that particular option that you've chosen. So in this case, I've done vendor card, and I've just said this is a company, a medium-sized company. This is a brand new company, so there's not many transactions in here, but I have pushed some through just to get some data coming back. So let's go back and have a look here. So in this case, I've said, right, I want to do it based on company size, and again, the header type. So I can report on how long I'm taking to pay my vendors. You may want to try this out on how long are you taking, or how long are your customers taking to pay you? And then you can obviously do a combination. In this case, I'm saying, well, take it over for a full year. And then all you need to do is click on generate. So because I've already run this report, it will delete my lines and recalculate for me. If I click on lines down here, what it's now doing is breaking it down by, because I chose company size up here, it's now saying large, medium, and small. And you can actually see on average, it's taking me 212 days to actually pay them. Now, when I said talk about clicking on links, I can actually go, well, yeah, 125 here. If I come into here, so this has got the payment entries, got the invoice, so the invoice date, the receive date, due date, when I actually posted it. Those are the amounts there. Is my invoice still open? And how many days did it actually take for me to pay them? So you can see there's quite a, I'm not very good at paying my suppliers, but there it is. And at the same time, you can obviously print this. It will go through and it will print a report. Now, it's not a glamorous report, but don't forget you can come in and change these. And I think as we go through, and as they said, they are going to develop this and make this globally, I think the reporting will be improved as it goes through. But don't forget, you can also, if you wanted to, sorry, down here, you could actually export this information out into Excel if you wanted to. Let's go and have one of the other ones. So I've done one here. Let's just go back. Let's look at this one. So I've done another one here, which was by vendor, but this one I've done by period. And if I come in and have a look here, you can now see, well, how long am I actually taking to pay? Am I paying, am I paying between 1 and 21 days? So 31% got paid. Generally 1% of my vendors are paid between those periods. So it is giving you the breakdown of how often you pay them. Same records as you can see here. This is where you can also export that out as well to Excel. But again, I've just turned that on the customer side based on days. And then the next one I think I tried as an experiment was, well, how often are our customers paying us? Let's go in and have a look in there. So again, I've done this by period. And again, we can see how often or how quickly customers are paying